Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are in the country and actually in the world. So good evening to some of you as well. I wanted to welcome you to our webinar, Lean in the Design Phase, presented by Terry Erickson from Kata Consulting. There's a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to go over before we get started. First thing is I want to thank everyone for their patience with our emergency time change. We understand that this is a Delta, but we do want to thank you for attending. The second thing is you'll notice the long skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen. There's a red arrow to the left of that box. That's the minimization and maximization arrow. Please feel free to use that throughout the presentation to view the presentation more closely. You'll also notice the questions box at the bottom of that long skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen. Please feel free to put questions throughout the presentation in that box, and we'll be answering those questions at the end. If they are about a particular slide or a particular thing that Terry mentions, please mention that as well. We'll also be doing a quick plus delta at the end of the presentation, and for those of you who are not familiar with the term, pluses are things you enjoyed about the presentation, you liked, that you thought were great, you're glad we went over, and deltas are kind of like wishes, things you wish you would have gone into more detail about, you wish you would have talked about it all, you thought we could have explained better. In the spirit of continuous improvement, we absolutely positively want your feedback. This session is being recorded, and a copy of the recording and the slide deck will go out to all registrants and attendees by close of business tomorrow, so please be on the lookout for that. This is an interactive session, and there will be a poll, so please be thinking about that as we go through as well. So just to do a little recap, we'd like to thank Terry and everyone for dealing with our time change. You'll notice the long skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen, the minimization and maximization arrow, the questions box, our quick plus delta. The session is being recorded, and a copy of the recording and the slide deck will be sent to all registrants and participants. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Terry. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. Welcome to Lean in the Design Phase. I'm Terry Erickson. I'm an improvement coach coming to you from Minnesota, and I'm looking forward to walking through this material with you. I'm a registered engineer, structural engineer. I also have a master's degree in engineering management with a focus on operations science. I've been working in the industry of design and construction, doing buildings and industrial structures for the past 25 years. I also did a stint for 4 years in manufacturing, where I was able to participate firsthand with Lean in the global manufacturing contest. So welcome again. I'm glad all of you are joining us. With our current social distancing policies, we actually have quite a high attendance with us today. At this point, there's about 486 registered for the presentation, but that might be live or recorded. But we have people that are also attending from all over across the United States, but we also have people from all over the world. So just a special welcome to our friends from Qatar. So let's start with a poll. If you could take a chance to check a box that represents the best option of what describes you or your group. If you're an owner's rep, check that box. Anybody who's representing an owner group. If you're an architect, engineer, other designer, check that box. If you're a construction manager, a general contractor, check that box. A trade partner, supplier, subcontractor, check that box. Or if you just feel that I left you out, maybe you're a building official, maybe you're a lean coach, you can check that box. And if you feel like one or two of these actually best describe you, feel free to check more than one box. So let's take a minute to do this poll, and Eileen will show us the results.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of votes coming in. We have at the moment about 350 people on the webinar, with more coming in. So we're going to leave this open for a little longer to see how many people come in. Okay. It looks like our results are, yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about the attendance today. We're going to leave it open for a couple more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and close and show the results. All right, and we're going to share the results with everybody. Terry, we have 56% that are architects, engineers, and other design partners, 31% that are construction managers and general contractors, 15% that are owners and owners reps, 6% that we left out, we're so sorry about that, and 3% that are trade partners, suppliers, and subcontractors.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eileen. Okay, so today we're going to be running through material that is related to lean in the design phase. The intent of this course is to take us from a place of relative unawareness to a place of awareness on our journey to mastery. So we're basically in this arena. This is not just blatantly unaware, but basically more in an area where we're gaining a deeper level of awareness and even moving ourselves towards understanding. Note that as one moves up from an understanding to competency, the journey takes us on this continuous learning cycle. And often when we get into a place where we're actually practicing whatever that particular skill is that we're learning, we'll get into continuous learning cycles of understanding and doing, and then getting to mastery often means that you figure out how much more you don't understand and you come back to the unaware. So here's our agenda for today. My intent with you is to take us through a conversation about the nature of design. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at lean foundational concepts that are important to how we apply lean to our work. So we're going to breeze through that quickly. There are other courses for this, but where we're going to spend our deeper dive is going to be on areas of approaches. So looking at things like organization of teams, the early team involvement. We've got big room that we're going to cover. We're going to focus on LAF planner system and design, target value delivery, set-based design, choosing by advantage, Kanban method, P3 prototyping, and A3 thinking. So this is where I intend to spend a majority of the time today. We're going to fly through the material fast. If you see things that pique your interest, please just write them down, seek more information, learn, start doing. There's no authority on these things. We have to just keep pursuing a deeper understanding and figuring out how it applies to us ourselves. If you have questions or need clarification, you can type them into the question window. Since I want to stay on track with the material, we might not be able to get to all the questions, but Eileen is going to be monitoring the comment window, and she will interrupt me if there's a quick question or a clarification that needs to happen. I intend to leave the questions to the end, and I'll provide you also with sources for your next steps, as well as contact information if you have questions and other sources. So let's start talking about the unique challenges in design. By nature, design is complex. It often involves thousands of decisions, sometimes over a period of many years, with numerous interdependencies, under highly uncertain environments. Design can involve a large number of participants and include many decision makers, require trade-offs between competing criteria, and be based on inadequate or incomplete information. Often we find incomplete information, and we often face intense budget and schedule constraints. These are challenges that are unique to design. So applying lean thinking to design. So what I've got here is an architect I have spoke with once. We sat down and talked, and he's like, Terry, this is what design is really like. And he scribbles all over a paper, and it kind of works its way towards a more linear process. So if you see, the black line is representing uncertainty. I'm sorry, the black line is representing progress, and the red line is representing kind of uncertainty as we move through a project towards project completion. The key here is applying lean thinking to design. Lean thinking in design and lean thinking in construction is different. And I just caution us all that it's not just a simple extension from going from lean in construction and just applying tools up into the lean and design phase. False starts can happen this way. basically when we take lean manufacturing and we apply it to construction, we often find that there's subtle differences. And similarly, when we take lean construction methods and we just apply it upstream to the design. So this is why we're here today, and we're going to talk about this. So let's start with a definition. So lean defined is a culture of respect and continuous improvement. It's aimed at creating more value for the customer while identifying and eliminating waste. So lean construction is a combination of operational research and practical development in design and construction with an adaptation of lean manufacturing principles and practices to the end-to-end design and construction process. We are going to be using this as our core definition, and then we're going to be applying this to a lot of approaches that we're going to be using. So the way we're going to go about this is so we're going to talk about the lean foundations, like I said, in a very expedited way. There is a primary piece of collaborative communication that's required for us to connect our approaches to our lean foundations. We're going to breeze past that, and we're going to leave that for another webinar, another presentation, because collaborative communication is a whole nother deep dive into how we interact and we communicate. But today we're going to focus kind of on the lean foundations and then the approaches that we can take. So lean operating system. So let's look at these components, these four fundamental lean foundations. The 6 tenets of lean we're going to cover: 8 wastes, pull, and PDCA. So this is the 6 tenets of lean. There are webinars, there are e-learning opportunities where you can actually access discussion and conversation on this. So this is just important for us to see as a foundation, as a base for what we're going to talk about later. But these core tenets are very important for us to always be having as a backdrop to what we do when we start applying these lean in our work. So this first one, which is respect for people, as you can see, this is kind of what encompasses the whole of what we're trying to do. Optimizing the whole, generating value, eliminating waste, focus on flow, and continuous improvement. These are foundational. The 8 types of waste are something that the lean manufacturing industry has really evolved and developed. And these are easy ways where all folks are able to kind of take these wastes and apply it to their own work. And they're able to start improving things and driving out waste. So what we've done is we've kind of taken these manufacturing concepts and we've kind of applied them to the lean construction industry. And so we're trying to kind of redefine this in a way that applies to us. We have a lot of examples now of 8 wastes in the lean in construction, but what we really have to start seeing and gaining the eyes to see is a lens of really seeing the waste that goes on in the design side. And it's a little bit harder because we're often looking at things that are not visible to us. So I'm not going to go through each one of these. There's a lot of opportunities. You can go to YouTube, you can go to Lean LCI. There's a lot of opportunities to learn more about the 8 wastes, but these are core foundations. And when we say waste, I also, just a side note, when we talk about our work and we talk about that there's waste, it can feel kind of offensive. Like as an engineer, the first time I started hearing people talking about my work and the way I work and saying there's waste, it really kind of made me get very nervous and I didn't like it. And now I kind of take a step back and I think about it and I'm like, okay, there's waste in our processes, there's waste in the way we work, and let's just see it and let's see what we can do about it. So let's talk about pull versus push. So there's been a saying in the lean environment that goes like this: flow where you can, pull where you can't, push if you must. So what are we talking about when we're talking about pull versus push? Well, in a push system, say you're a supermarket and you get an order of 10 cans of corn every week. And no matter what, you just get 10 cans of corn. And the 10 cans of corn comes to your back door, you put them on the shelf, they sell, sometimes they don't. That's a push system. It's just, I get 10 cans of corn every week. Well, as opposed to a pull system would be that we have corn on the shelf, and once a can of corn gets sold, a trigger happens, and that causes a replenishment system to pull cans of corn from the suppliers and gets it in the back door and gets it out to the shelf. So it's creating that indicator that causes us and triggers this action. This is really key because we have to have these triggers in order to really have pull going on, and pull is a part of flow. So the thing that is a little bit different too is when we're in construction, you're often seeing physical materials flowing and being pulled, but in design, we're often dealing with concepts and ideas. So it's more information based. So that's one of our challenges, is to take that on because it's harder to see. So we can't talk about lean without talking about continuous improvement PDCA cycle. So the PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act, is a continuous improvement cycle, and that came out of manufacturing again, but it allows us to basically, we plan our work. This is based on a scientific method for improvement. Is we plan, or what we do is we create a prediction, maybe a hypothesis, but it's something that we plan or predict that's based on good information. It's a good hypothesis. It's not just random. And then we do it, we test it, and then we check, we study those results, and we see what those outcomes are, and what did we learn, and then we act and adjust. And it just becomes this continuous improvement cycle. And lean thinking demands this mindset of continuous improvement. So this is foundational to everything that we do. So getting off the lean foundations, yes.
I am going to interrupt you for just a second while you were talking about pull and push. You mentioned construction quite a bit. Could you present an example for pull specifically in design?
Yes, I will do that. So a pull, and I am going to talk about this more because I'm going to actually bring this up later, but pull might mean a trigger, some kind of trigger where we don't do a design activity until we're requested to do it. So we're holding back and we're not just pushing design out. So for example, you might have a schedule that you all agree to at the beginning of a project and say, we're going to design our foundations, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to design the beam framing. And then you put dates to it, and then you just keep pushing it out. Well, pull would be more the architect requesting that particular thing, and so then you're doing that activity at the time that they actually request it. I promise you we'll come back to this one. Thank you, Eileen. So again, this piece about collaborative communication, this is a very important topic, but I'm not going to cover it here, but I do know that if you take Intro to Lean Project Delivery, it is very well covered in that. And also in there's a course on Big Room that really dives into this as well. So we're going to focus today, we're going to focus on these approaches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep bringing this slide back so that you can kind of see where we're at as we go. But let's start with early team involvement. Early involvement of construction and trade partners in combination with clear goals and high-performing teams has resulted in better outcomes for owners. So let's take a look at this chart. Basically what we're seeing is the progression of time from you know, you've got your pre-design, you've got your schematic design, design development, construction, moving through into the construction activity. Well, our ability to make design changes actually decreases, we all know this, as the project progresses. The costs of these design changes actually increase. And so traditionally, we find that we do, you know, limited numbers of people are involved in projects, and as we go, and then we get this crescendo going on, which, you know, most of my 20 years, 25 years in my career as a structural engineer get highly active in this area of the CD phase alone. Traditional delivery often involves being alone, not alone meaning with a design team. But what we're trying to do, we're aiming to do, is to pull that effort and get it really up front and get it earlier in that whole project. We are shifting this black curve towards the gold one. And this means if all goes well, the costs are incurred earlier in the project with the goal of incurring less cost overall towards the end. So, and there's ways that we can do this. We can do this through the way we do our contracting. Excuse me real quick. So we can do this with the way we do our contracting. We can do it by bringing in trade partners in design assist. There's a number of ways that this can happen. Typically, it's more successful when the contract actually supports this. I've tried often to, you know, pull contractors into projects early, and, you know, there's a difference when you don't have money on the table. So for owner groups, I really challenge you to provide resources to help design teams get their trade partners involved early when it makes sense. The other thing that's critical is it's critical that you have design partners and construction partners and trade partners that actually have skills to be able to operate together in that phase. In other words, not all trade partners are typically used to this environment being a part of the design, and it could be very frustrating for folks that aren't to be pulled into that design phase where we have all those squiggly lines and iterations of trying to go through design cycles. So moving on to Big Room as an approach to help lean design teams. The Big Room is an opportunity where we can bring key individuals together to speed up communication and really make decisions in an expedited way together with the right people in the room and reduce that siloed thinking. Often engineers and designers are sitting alone at their desks and they're making limited, they have limited input in the decisions they're making, and they're often making it based on a lot of their own thinking. Well, when we get into these rooms, we can ask people questions and we can really drive that collaboration. So we're really getting a collaborative brain power output. The other thing that goes on in the Big Room is trust building happens. People start to understand how people, just their behavior and what kind of personalities they have. It produces less rework and waste because we're actually getting the input at the time and not going through full cycles. And it just promotes a rapid advancement of the work. So I'm going to show you, because often in construction, they often have a location that is dedicated to the project. And so often they are able to set up a big room and have their visuals up and visual boards. But in design, we often don't have this dedicated space. So just to understand that this can look very different depending on what the project group is made of and what they are, what resources they have available to them. So you can see sometimes people are actually pulling people together in a large group and they're 100% co-locating. Sometimes it's a smaller project and they might just co-locate once a week. I've seen architects who have tried to create a big room within their office, But the trouble is applying a big room to one full room of their office was really difficult because there's other projects going on in the office. And why does that one architect get to have that room? So when we can do it at an owner group, at an owner site, that creates a better opportunity, especially if you have those ongoing projects. Hospitals often have those ongoing projects, so they can have the big room might be able to be set up on their site. But even when I've been to hospital projects and seen, they often are moving them around in locations. So there's a real challenge in how do we create these visual rooms with lots of data and information and messages and on the wall and our work on the wall, and how do we do this in a way that we can move it around? So a couple of the ways, so I'm really kind of challenging, I'm putting in some challenges here for us as a design community, is how do we really figure out how to do effective big room? And if you don't have dedicated space, the other thing I am putting this out is how do we do it with the COVID-19 paradigm that we're all dealing with social distancing? A few strategies that I have found and I have seen others use is creating movable boards, maybe having boards that are reversible so you can reverse them, and possibly using leveraging more virtual tools. So there are virtual tools out there that are literally just whiteboards, or they have a lot of like sticky notes and tools that you can use to create that experience. But this is definitely a challenge, and there is a lot to say about being physically together. So we'll have to figure that out. Just to give you another example of when you get folks into a big room like this, it's really important that ground rules get established. As a example, there's a project that in California which was UHS Temecula Hospital, and what they found is that they had to established ground rules, and here are, for example, some of those ground rules. Now, I took this out of a report that's available for anybody. UC Berkeley has this, and I'll mention this again later on, but they have a report where they have put together a whole lot of statistics, a lot of pictures, a lot of description of some of the things that happened on that project. But I think this is important because when you're not just creating a space in big room, but you're also creating behaviors. You're trying to establish behaviors that you're going to want to see in this room. So, and here's another important point. These are usually ground rules that are established by the team. So the team really feels ownership in them. So that's really important. I'm just looking to see, I see that there's questions going on, and I just want to make sure, Eileen, feel free to interrupt if you see something that I should address. So when we're gathering in these groups, just a word about respect and time. I'm going to throw out just a few hints that I'm noticing with regards to how we use our time and how we're respectful to that. Number one is just this idea of plus delta. We're going to be doing this at the end, but this idea of plus delta, this is a really good opportunity for us to do quick cycles of learning and improvement after our meeting. So teams, they can meet and they quickly can do a plus delta. Just throw up a white paper or on a whiteboard, just quickly mark and put a plus, put a delta, and get the team feedback. Often you'll find that when you first start doing this, and you can do this in your office, you can do this at any meeting. Often you'll find in the beginning is people it's hard for them to really come up with constructive things. They might not have a lot of great ideas, but once you start doing this with a group and you do it a few times, they start getting quick at it and they start actually expecting it, and they really like that opportunity to do that input, especially when you take the deltas and you actually follow through with them. So that's just a quick tool. And another one is the parking lot. Often people will go off agenda. They'll find something really important that needs to be talked about, but maybe that meeting is not the place for it. So throwing up either a spot on a whiteboard or a big giant white sticky, putting that poster board up and just saying parking lot, and then managing that throughout the meeting is a great opportunity for. It's a respectful way to acknowledge when people have really important things, but it's not the time for it. So I really recommend people utilize the parking lot. I do this for almost all the meetings that I engage with because it's such a handy tool, and it's such a great way to just say, hey, Bill, that's a great point. Can we put it in the parking lot and talk about it later, and then create action items for that? And the other thing is just regarding meeting flow. Sometimes when folks are just going on about something and they repeat and repeat and repeat, or sometimes it's just good to maybe have like a fun object where you just might throw something at somebody and just say, enough, let's move on. And so it becomes that indicator where people aren't always aware of themselves. And so it helps a team just kind of have fun and move and keep the meeting flowing, because we're trying to do lean. We're trying to do flow. We want our meetings to flow. So another approach that teams are using is work cluster organization. So how we organize our teams is very important to the outcomes. When we sit in functional silos, so maybe a group of the structural engineers here and the group of the architects here and the estimators, and when we're all kind of siloed, it really does lead to breakdown in communication. So when we have things like big room, or we have these effective meetings going on, but this is an opportunity for us to actually create cluster groups that become more cross-functional. So the cluster group containing integrating an estimator, whatever the project manager who's managing schedule, the designers. And so when we can get those cluster groups and then to focus on a particular topic. So when we are doing a big room and maybe doing some last planner work or like a lean in construction type initiative, we can really focus to topics and then create those cluster groups. As an example, this is also from the Temecula Hospital project, and again, out of their report, so that you can actually study that and see how they organize their groups. But these were the groups that they created, and then they had representatives from each of the cluster groups that all represented together in the core group. And the goal of the cluster group is really to be problem focused. That's one of the agreed upon policies that they had. So not only do you create this cluster group, but the team comes up with the goals of their group, and the team also establishes the roles and responsibilities for all the members of that group. So, and then having that leader that reports then at the core group, and then keeping the communication between all the groups. So obviously this requires a certain size of a project, but at the same time, even a mid-sized project where you may want to separate things, like I've found nice separations with core and shell versus MEP. Often architects are already ahead on this because when they're doing design meetings, they're often separating and getting the right people in the room. So this is just an important fundamental thing to keep in mind, is this opportunity for work cluster organization, and also being okay to assemble and dismantle the groups or reassemble as needed. So you can see this is where we're at. So far, we've covered the early team involvement, the big room, and the organization of teams. So now let's move on to some of these other methods and systems for applying lean in our design phase. So remember this slide. So I promised Eileen that I would come back to it. And so bringing in operations science, some core operations science fundamentals, is this concept of flow. What is absolutely necessary for flow to happen is we have to have pull signals. If we don't have pull signals, we literally just end up with a push process. So what does that mean? So a push is an example of a push. Again, might be where we just have our material that's being delivered to the site every week, or say, for example, the rebar supplier gets done with it and they push it out to the job site. Another example of that push might be is, again, well, I got done with the foundation package and design, or the MEP did it, and they just, their work, and then they just pushed it over to the architect. It's right on schedule, but it's just pushed. Well, when we create actual signals, we would actually wait for a request to happen, and then we would provide it. So instead of just providing the foundation package 2 weeks from Friday, we actually provide it when people want it. And we create a system that allows us to create those signals of when that is to happen. So let's just take this operational concept and challenge ourselves to think about, okay, how does this apply? Because we're gonna pull this into how we use Last Planner. This concept is going to be fundamental to it. If anybody's heard from like the manufacturing industry, just-in-time delivery, well, this is an example of when we provide something when it's being requested, then we're kind of providing it just in time. And that helps us to keep that flow going. So another little operational science thinking is how flow and smaller batches are related. Operation science has proved that there's a correlation of batch sizes to flow efficiency. So it's true for many reasons. It helps us to reduce risk and variability. It shortens our cycle time and allows quicker feedback cycles. So getting things in smaller batches, you might find out some information that you had a misunderstanding. Oh my gosh, I was using the 1997 UBC and I was supposed to be using the 2016 IBC, which shouldn't happen. But those might be the things where you're finding quick cycles of, for example, shop drawing reviews. I've thought about where I've seen this is where like the steel supplier might supply a pre-shop drawing where they just go through their criteria, just a small batch. They go through their criteria, they get approval on that, and then they dive into their shop drawings of the steel fabrication. Well, that way they didn't do a whole bunch of work and then have to redo. I've had that happen too, where the entire building is being submitted at one time and they had a fundamental mistake, and then they have to go back to the drawing board and redesign everything. So this is an opportunity for us to increase quality and reduce defects. So again, I challenge all of us to continue to see where we can use smaller batches and how this might be applied directly to our design work. I am continually in pursuit of this, and the answer isn't always a batch size of 1. However, there's something about when we have a batch size of 1, you can truly have like this flow. But and often in manufacturing they talk about this, but there might be some ideal, this point where we optimize and maximize our outcome or related to that batch size. So I encourage people to challenge your teams to think in terms of what is the real right batch size for whatever that task is. And by the way, when we look here in these processes, this inventory that's building up, I get it. We're looking at physical material here, but think about designers. We've got information, and often we're stacking information and holding on to it and then handing it off to the next person in the process. Sometimes this results in a list of 100 bullet points of things that we're waiting to hand over to another designer or another part stakeholder in the process. Maybe if we could do smaller batches and have more frequent exchanges. I challenge people to see that because there is flow that will result in that. So the other part that I wanted to focus on with regards to operation science is handoffs. In systems thinking, the links that join things together are often of higher leverage points for impact if we can make a change. And one of these links that we have in our construction and design systems is these handoffs. So this is a handoff of, in construction, we might think of it as flows of materials. In pre-construction, people may think of this as flows of information, physical information. Here's the drawings. In design, it might be the flow of ideas. So thinking in terms of how do we make those handoffs in clear and concise, and we know, if you think about it, the track stars that are, doing they're focusing on practicing that handoff when you go watch people at the track. So again, I challenge everyone with a lean challenge that how can your team improve at handoffs? And I'm going to give you a little hint. I'm seeing a lot of success, and I think everyone will find success is if they create higher levels of visibility and transparency as a key to getting to this. Again, I'm going to point out like a handoff flaw that I see often is that thing where you get a call from the construction manager and they're like, hey, I sent you those shop drawings last week for review. Did you get them? And you're like, oh, I didn't see them. They're not, oh, there it is. Oh, whoops, it got lost in my inbox. That often we will lose weeks and weeks just to those miscommunications that happen in handoff. So this is a great area for our whole industry to be challenged to focus on, is how do we improve at these handoffs? So those three operational foundational things I'm bringing into this conversation about Last Planner system. What I'm trying to show here is this is the overlay, the big picture of Last Planner and construction. I know this is a big piece of information, and there's actual many seminars or classes that you can take where you can really dive into how we execute Last Planner systems. But I'm showing this right now because what I want to do is connect this to what we're doing for Last Planner systems in design. So the Last Planner system in construction is a way for constructors to connect 5 conversations to keep projects flowing. It's a system of planning and replanning. We're using 5 connected conversations where we start at there's this should level where we're doing milestone planning, we're doing phase planning. It's that milestone planning is that roadmap for the project, and phase planning is happening at that 8 to 12 weeks, kind of looking at chunks of work, what makes sense as a phase. And generally teams are finding that to be around that 8 to 12 weeks, but it's the conversations that happen are going to use words like should. We get into that next conversation, which is that look ahead planning. And that's when we're starting to get a little closer to being more confident about what we can do. We start saying, I can. We use the language that really reflects more of a can, I can do this. And often this is also called a make work ready phase. But this is where we're doing look ahead planning. And this might be where we're looking out 6 weeks or less. And I'm going to say, for teams that are just starting out in construction, they're often finding just 1 to 2 week look aheads is challenging enough for their group. So this other conversation is this weekly work planning, which is the will. I will do that. Next week, this will happen. And so we're making promises and we're using commitment language. And so that conversation is happening at a more reliable lookout level. And then we do these conversations that talk about I did this. And that's where we do the learning and improving. And so this is our opportunity to look at metrics. This is our opportunity to talk about what just happened and learn from it and improve. And so these 5 connected conversations are what kind of is the core foundational roadmap for the Last Planner system in construction. Again, which is a system for us to plan our work, manage our work, improve our work, and replan our work. So looking at Last Planner system in design, which again, the Lean Construction Institute has an entire course that's devoted to Lean Last Planner system in design as well. They've got an entire course that's devoted to Last Planner system in construction. But when we take Last Planner and design, we're really taking, if you notice, there's a little change that's happening. And that's that key difference is at that can stage, we're often focused on more of a design cycle. So that's the one piece that's a little different. Since design is continuously emerging based on new information, it just leads us to many more iterations. And so we're constantly doing a define the work, advance the work, define the work, advance the work. So that's a cycle that, and so often teams are finding that just looking out the 2 to 3 weeks is a guideline, but it's something that teams are having more success for. It just gets to be about that sweet spot. 1 week too small, 4 weeks it just feels too long. So, and the key again, this maps back to that reliability. So that chart that I showed earlier in the presentation, where we're in a much more reliable state, is so that reliability in construction about more linear process, and we can plan a little bit out further. But in design, often that can planning is happening more at that 2 to 3 weeks. So let's look at some teams actually doing Last Planner system in design. So here we see a team over on the left, they're setting milestones. So individually, and I'm just going to make the assumption that whoever's standing in front of the stickies, it's theirs. But this guy in the dark blue shirt, he's put out his stickies and he's kind of getting in his logical order. No one's really using dates. They're just putting their steps in order. So let's say he might be let's call him the architect. And then the guy next to him is the mechanical engineer, and he's got his green stickies and he's putting out the stuff that he's going to do. And they're first just getting together and they're just getting a look at their work. They're having conversations about their work and they're getting it out and sequencing. And then what they do is then they start integrating that and they put it all together and they talk through it often from the right side to the left side. In other words, let's start at the end and let's move backwards towards the beginning. And so using different colors this is different aspects of the plan, but it might be where you're actually talking in terms of different trades. You might be, or different design types, or you might be talking about different decision points. But so this is now where the team has now put this together, and you can kind of see now there's just one guy up there, so they're probably sitting back and just doing a bit of a sanity check on this. So this is the way that a milestone planning might go. When people do phase pull planning, they are basically getting their information. These are likely colors by the different trades or the different types of designers, and they're getting their stickies up, and this one is actually broken into down to the days. So each of these boards is representing, each vertical column is representing a day, and they're actually putting their stickies on. You'll notice that some of them are tilted. What that often means is that they're just either signaling that someone's making a request or that someone is not yet quite committed to doing that. So, because commitment to doing something, it involves a requester and it involves a doer. So it's kind of this two-part, like somebody's making a request and I'm going to do it. So these little tickets become the signal for a pull system. So going back to that concept of creating signals for pull is how we can get that flow. So they might have a promise date on, they might actually just put the amount of work that it's going to take. But the key is what is it that I promise to give? Someone has requested something from me, and what do I promise to give? And then putting the thing, what is it that I need to do? What the last planner promises to give and what the last planner needs to complete the task. So there's the giver, what I need to give, and what I need. So this is an opportunity for the group to collaboratively come together and use the sticky notes as an opportunity to communicate the work sequencing and commitment levels. Again, if the diamond tags are kind of at a tilt, it often just means we're not yet committed. And these are just techniques that people use. You don't have to do it that way, but these are some of the ways that people have done that have made it successful. The other thing I'd love to point out on this board, which is kind of fun, is as you can see, here's Christmas, this holiday. And because this board right here is in weeks. And look at all the work right before the holiday, which is pretty typical of everybody's trying to smash and get a whole lot done before they go away for the holiday. So I'm not sure about, it looks like we're doing a lot of work right before the holiday. Human nature. So again, and I'm not going to stop on this issue of it's so important that we create a pull system and we actually have these triggers. So a promise is made. So, and to give you, let me just run through like an example of what this might look like. So say the structural engineer says, I promise to deliver floor framing beam sizes, okay? But I need mechanical opening sizes and locations from the mechanical engineer. I need floor layout and the use of the floor system by the architect, and I need floor rating requirements, fire rating requirements from the fire protection engineer. So you kind of make these requests. So now you've got this chain, and what you do as a group is you follow that chain. So let's say the purple down at the bottom is the mechanical engineer, and the mechanical engineer is saying, I will provide duct sizes and locations, but I need the architect to approve the shaft locations, or I need the owner's rep to provide building performance requirements. And so now we're kind of triggering the next level. And if that blue represents the architect might say, I will provide shaft locations, but I need interior designers to provide the cabinet sizes. And so goes that cycle. So that's what I'm going to say about Last Planner in
Actually,
design.
Terry,
Yeah,
if
go
I can
ahead.
interrupt you for just a second. I have a couple questions on Last Planner. I thought I'd go ahead and
Please, let's do that. Yeah.
yes. There's a couple that go together. One of them is, any thoughts on how you use Last Planner system in our current COVID-19 environment, since these sessions are usually handled in person? And I want to ask that with the other one that says, what is your experience with collaborative lean softwares in Last Planner system and design? Because international design projects are often served by remote design centers scattered around the world.
Yes, so that's a really good question. And there are, and I'm going to show a little bit of this at the end, but there are software companies that are actually rising to that challenge. And what I'm finding is there is something very important about physically engaging and being able to, move your stickies and be connected physically, but we are challenged right now with being socially distanced. And there are a number of software companies. If you go to LCI's website, there you can actually look at what is it called, Eileen, like vendor partners or whatever, and you can find some of those companies. And they actually, there's some benefits that come from using software. Number one is you could be in separate locations, and they're creating them in ways that we actually almost use it similarly to how we would do it physically in person. And what the software will often do too is it puts guardrails up so that we get the system right. And so it becomes a little easier for us to actually follow through and learn from the system. And then the other key thing is metrics and data almost automatically gets spit out of them. So there's things like vPlanner or TouchPlan that are two particular ones that are focused on Last Planner. So sometimes folks are actually getting together in a big room and then they're still using software. So you can do that in multiple ways, but I think we're all being challenged right now to figure out how to do this all in a new way, and it might actually be a catalyst for more rapid improvement of how we engage together.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to fast forward. Okay. So let's talk about target value delivery. And really, in order to talk about target value delivery, we're going to compare it a bit to traditional delivery. And I know that's not really fair because design build folks and all that, there's a lot of other mechanisms and delivery contract methods that are solving some of this, but this is how we're going to approach this just so that we can get a basic understanding of target value delivery. There's a whole lot more to this concept, and there's actually another lean course, LCI course, that's devoted to target value delivery where people do take a dive, and it's really getting expanded, and there's a lot of folks that are really contributing to this knowledge base. So, but traditional delivery is an approach where we are often coming up with some concept, we're doing the design, and then we're pricing it, and then we're finding out we're over budget or under budget, and then we're getting looped back. You know, if you're over budget, you got to go back and redesign. If you're under budget, hey, we can spend more money, and so then we're going back. So it's this causing this rework. The cost is an output of the design. You finish your work before I start mine mentally. You know, that's that whole thought of, from an estimator and from the construction perspective, is you guys finish your work and I'll start mine. Early commitment to design solutions happen in silos, and that design is then what determines that cost later. So target value delivery fundamentally shifts the dial on, it gets the estimating, it gets that costing before, right here, before we're doing the design. So the goal of target value delivery is minimizing the waste produced by redesign cycles that we often see in these traditional value engineering loops. So by getting that costing earlier up front, before we do the design, and then being constantly aware, we can always be moving towards this targeted cost. Cost then becomes an input to the design instead of an output of the design. Information is getting shared early. And by the way, this target value delivery is very intertwined with collaborative approaches. So that's that part that I left out of this presentation, but that's a very important piece, is understanding how to do big rooms and how to do collaborative communication in very effective ways to build high-performing teams. But with this, we're almost doing continuous estimating or smaller batching of the estimating instead of one large batching cycle of estimating. So we're using that concept, that operational concept that we were just talking about regarding using smaller batches. That's a great way to apply this to the design side, is getting smaller batching of our estimating done. So again, this is going to involve teaming of cross teams, those who are doing the construction work and those who are designing the construction work. So with target value delivery, this is a really nice way to look at this as an application of Taiichi Ohno's, which is coming out of the whole Toyota way in the manufacturing, is a practice of self-imposing necessity as a means for continuous improvement. In other words, we have ideas and there's costs to those ideas, and having that creative tension between what that vision is and that current reality. Now, what target value delivery does is it gives us more of a systematic way of doing and approaching that particular challenge. And typically target value design, and I actually like how this goes up first, because often when I see the metrics on target value design, at first costs might start going up, but this awareness, being this continually aware of the cost, the team actually, it ends up driving down for a better solution, a higher value solution, versus in traditional design bid build. You know, often what we'll find is that cost is invisibly creeping up, and sometimes I say invisibly, where really we're seeing delays. There might be costs that are creeping up, but you don't even know about it yet, so you find out later. But without the full transparency and these quick feedback cycles of cost, that we don't have those levers to control that creep. And so often that creep is going up. And I think this is part of the reason why owners end up feeling much more not in control and not able to keep that creep going up. And it's part of the dissatisfaction, I think, in our industry that folks have, which brings me to another point, is there is an LCI course on the business case for lean. And I encourage anybody to check that out. There's also a PDF for that, but it's an opportunity to really understand more the dissatisfactions in the industry and how lean is actually some of the metrics that show the outcome of that. So, but here's the other thing that happens too in traditional, because some of these costs go up, and people don't want to always be disappointing in iterations, but they'll start buffering with contingencies. And now this cost rise becomes hidden. And if we build transparency, which target value delivery does, is there's a real high level of trust going on in the room, because people are being open and transparent about their pricing and their costs and their profits. And so this creates an entire environment of transparency, and where the teams are really able to really pull levers to actually change direction of costs and design quickly. So again, we're basically when people go through target value delivery, these are some of the guidelines, is they develop a cost model. So a model for the cost so that they're can continually be adjusting it. They have a clear schedule of values, and they measure things against the benchmarks. And then the design is very much to the estimate instead of estimating to the design. So we'll often find these estimators become a more vital part of the design team. They're more engaged, they're leading, and whether it's the project manager or the estimator who's doing this, but in the big room, there's often this time where this estimator is talking through their estimate and showing it to everyone, this is a behavior that does not always go on. And this is a very sensitive and hard area for people. But when we put these guidelines together and we build a full system of target value delivery, we can have really great outcomes for owners, and we can all work together to do that. So, and here's the third point, is that we're basically able to have collaborative design conversations before we start drawing. People tend to be very unmotivated when they have to do rework. And so if the first time people are doing something and they're enthusiastic about it, and then it comes in over budget and we have to go back and do redesign, there's a human psychology piece about doing rework is not that exciting. And so people will find you might not be getting the best just because of that human psychology piece. We're basically making decisions after considering sets or options and collaboratively making decisions in the context of the whole. So we're always being able to look at that whole cost and make decisions and make trade-offs, which is really going to lead us into some of these coming up on set-based design and CBA. So again, to show this in a graphical form is this continuous estimating model. So this is where we're doing these quick cycles of estimating and costing versus doing it only at these phase points. So the model on the top, this shows more of a push system. We are going to set the date for schematic design on this day, and this is when DD happens, and this is when CD happens. Oh, and by the way, we're going to do a 50% CD set and get costing, and this is all predetermined, and then we push our teams through this system. In target value delivery, we're continually doing these iterations, and we're learning and we're adjusting and adapting and growing. So it's a different way of looking at it. So this is where we're at so far. We're going to head into set-based design and choosing by advantage next. So to start this conversation, I want to lay out this concept of last responsible moment. So there is this cost, this dashed line representing the cost of deferring a decision. And then there's also the the cost of deciding. So this goes back to that original curve when we were first early on looking. It was a black slide, and it showed that the ability to make changes, kind of decreases over time. And so the cost, that's backwards. The cost of deciding. This ability, this is more talking about the ability, but what we're really trying to get to here is creating this last responsible moment, a strategy of not making a premature decision, but instead delaying our commitment and keeping important and irreversible decisions open until the cost of not making a decision becomes greater than the cost of making the decision. So the cost of deferring that decision versus the cost of deciding. So how do we find that sweet spot? Often engineers and designers are trying to figure out where that last spot that we can make that decision is. And contractors are often trying to think of, well, how early do I have to make that decision so that I don't impact and have negative impacts on the backside? So this is something we always have to be thinking about. And the goal is that we're not making decisions too early in that time cycle. So this is what leads us into the idea of set-based design. And I know this is titled point-based design, but this is more of the traditional way that we might think about this. So in point-based design, we have a bunch of options that we start out in the beginning, and we traditionally will make a decision, and then we will pass that decision on. So we'll start with these few options, and then a single person or a small group of people will make a decision, and that option is chosen, and then we move on. And then we develop that and design that option. So, I'm showing a pencil, probably not a lot of pencil drawing going on anymore, but this is where we're starting to get this drawn and solidified into the drawing. And then we do that pricing, right? And at this point, this is almost like the test. And if it passes, well, that's great. This was a really efficient process. We had a bunch of choices, we made one, and we went right forward, and this passed. But as an owner, you have to wonder, did you really the best choice or the best solution? But the other problem is if it fails, either it's way over budget or way under budget, meaning like under budget again might mean if you have more of a creative or a design feature for architecture. If it's under budget, it's like, well, maybe we could do something better. And so then it might send you back to the beginning. But if it fails, so we're back to option failed, and then we're back to that iteration. Again, this is now creating that restart, causing rework, and which then has lots of forms of waste that then get associated as secondary to that. And again, just even the enthusiasm for the restart it's psychologically, it's hard on teams. So to think about set-based design, so where we'll start with many options, and we'll have, often teams are actually doing more options than they would have considered for the set-based design. So they'll put those out on the table. They'll evaluate the risks and in consideration of the project as a whole. So you'll start quickly seeing whether it's intuition or whether it's facts, but you start seeing that there's some options that are just going to have to get eliminated. They're weaker. And so then we have a group of decisions or design ideas moving forward. Now the key is now we're kind of flipping into another level of design of vetting this decision out. But the key, what I find with designers and engineers and architects, is holding back. Like, we're only going to, at this level, we're only going to develop that design so far. So we're going to agree that we're going to leave certain questions still unanswered, because what we're trying to do is get to a point where we can make another decision and eliminate more. So options continually are evaluated and narrowed. This can be very difficult for certain types of folks. Like I struggle often with engineers on keep holding them back from running a design all the way through to completion. So this is a real vulnerable way of going about this. But at the end of the day, if the team agrees that they're working on this together like this, they can get to that solution, and by going through these sets and only developing them to a certain level. So that's the concept of set-based design. If you notice, we don't have iterations of rework, and the final option gets selected, and it's very transparent. And, you know, hey, as an owner now, you can really feel like a good decision was made and it was well vetted out, and you're very pleased. Some teams I've heard reported, especially when I'm at like Lean Congress and you're listening to teams report on what they've done, some teams have been as crazy as like having hundreds of options to start with. And it's interesting how energized and motivated the team is, because it's almost like this challenge to like keep eliminating and get to that great solution, and the criteria that they can base it on and all of that. So set-based design is not exactly telling you how to decide which ones go forward, but it's this framework of how we move our ideas and we narrow down. And again, there's no rework cycle, so we don't have that waste going on, and we're holding back the design from, so that last responsible moment, we're not getting too far ahead of ourselves. Here's an example of a project that is for an intake on a prison, and this a prison program. And so what they're doing is they're reevaluating a number of options for layouts. And again, this is the creative way that you do this analyzation and convergence and deciding as a group. That's a different topic. But the key is that they're carrying these forward, and they're carrying them forward to different levels of clarity and different levels of detail, depending on how far along they are in that set-based approach. So that is set-based design. So let's talk a little bit about collaborative decision-making, CBA. I think we've got about 10 minutes left, and then we'll take questions. So let's ask ourselves how our team really makes decisions. Does anyone feel like it's difficult to get a group to make a great decision together in a way that's not overly frustrating, or in a way that you really think that it leads to the best outcome? Well, there is ways that we can increase our decision quality if we follow a more sound and more methodical decision-making process. So the answer really starts with what's the method that we're using to make those decisions. And this is interesting because we will often not think about the method. We just dive into the decision making. So let's take a step back and let's slow down and let's think. Great collaborative decision making, it's not natural, but teams can make great decisions together. So we need sound methods. And a sound decision-making method is going to involve things like using correct data, and by the way, using the data correctly, anchoring our decision-making to relevant facts. So often, you know, folks are using facts that don't even apply, avoiding critical mistakes, or encouraging vital thinking skills. And here's the other thing, too, when it comes to sound decision making. How much are we really being influenced by our cognitive biases? So these biases that we have that we bring to the table, and we don't even know that we have them. So when decisions need to be made that involve multiple parties with numerous factors, we can rely on a sound decision making. You know, also, just to point out, often when I'm working with teams and I've been on teams, you get to that point where it's just like we almost have the territories for decision making. So, you know, you get to this point and it's like, oh, we need to make a decision. Okay, go ask that person. That's, you know, go ask Ron. Ron knows everything. And so we don't really collect the best information out of a group. So choosing by advantages is taking this and approaching this problem in a sound decision way. Jim Sewer is the original developer of this method. And what we're doing is we're looking at the advantages of each option. So right here is a spreadsheet that was created kind of originally, but if anybody Googles Jim Sewer and choosing by advantage, you'll find out more information. But this is a way that we're comparing these advantages and these alternates. Now, let me break this down a little bit. We approach this in a very methodical way in order to come out with a great solution that we can really rely on. What it requires is when teams first start doing CBA or collaborative decision making, they will have to go slow. So it's this whole concept of let's go slow in the beginning so we can get good and then start going faster. So what you're seeing in the beginning is like actually using layering of decision-making, the decision-making process, and holding the team back and keeping the whole team focused on the first step, then the second step, then the third step. So first, let's identify these alternates, get them up there. What are our viable? Remember in the PDCA cycle, we're going to start with hypotheses for alternatives that are actually reasonable. Then we're going to define these factors and these criteria. And if we can keep the team focused together on these different steps, then we go through a process of describing each alternative attribute. And then there's this point where the team actually starts weighing these and actually putting them on a scale so that of importance and advantages. What's interesting is you can actually take things like you might be comparing apples to oranges, like a thing that you think is an apple to an orange. Like you might be a qualitative advantage. You might be comparing it to a quantitative, or you might take tangible benefits and compare it to intangible benefits. But what this process allows us to do is take the apples and oranges, convert the oranges to apples, and then we can compare apples to apples. So at the end of it, we end up with an evaluation, and then we can actually come up with a best solution. So over here is kind of some a way to see how this ends up. Again, CBA has an entire course on this. I've been in like all day trainings on this. Often you can, get a good start, get a basic understanding of it, start doing it with your team, and then keep learning from there. There are teams now that when it comes down to decision making and they're in a meeting, somebody might just yell out, you start getting good at it, they might just yell out, let's do a CBA. Quickly, they all run over to the wall. And in 15 minutes, they come up with a really great decision, but they did it in a methodical way. And what's interesting is everyone can walk away then and they've got buy-in on that decision and they really feel ownership. They can proclaim to others why we made that decision. And it isn't just well, Bill made that decision and I don't agree with it. Instead, it's we all made this decision and here's why. So that's the benefit that we get from a process like CBA. Again, I encourage if you're more interested in this, take a course in it and learn and then try it and do it. So let's run through. I'm going to run through these quick and then we'll wrap up. So Kanban method. This is an area that is very interesting. The software development folks are really diving in and using this as a way of managing their workflow. And what they're doing and what we can learn from this, because I see a lot of our design practices as an opportunity where we can really use Kanban, the Kanban method to engage our, number one is understand our work better and to see flow happening and to improve our flow. So the word Kanban, it comes out of Japanese, the Japanese manufacturing system, and kan means signal, and ban means card or board. So we're basically creating a board with signals. Now remember what we talked about with signals. So we're visualizing our work. And remember what we talked about with signals is that signals allow us to create flow. So what they do on these boards is they use something called work in progress limits. So they limit WIP. And what up here on the top is they'll have like circles, and so a column might represent a process step. this is just stolen from the software folks, but I've got an example that I'm going to show you how I'm applying it to a trade a trade contractors engineering and design group, but where we limit the amount of work packets that can be in a particular column. And what this does is it allows us to get more focused on finishing tasks than starting them. There's a saying that goes in the Kanban community: stop starting, start finishing. And this is a way of focusing, again, right to left, and actually pulling our work through the system and focusing more on finishing and getting work done. So the way that this one is set up is just set up it just maps out the process, whatever that department is doing. So we're visualizing the work, we're limiting the work in process, we're focusing on flow, and then we're agreeing together to continuously improve this process together. And by creating a flow system, it's this limiting work in process, which creates the signals, which is the magic that really changes teams from just seeing their work on the board and making this a task that is unbearable. They always have to be updating a board. Once they start limiting the work in process and creating those pulse signals, this gets very handy for their teams. So I'm just going to quickly show you a Kanban board can be simple. But it can also be complex. And the one that I created, I've created with a trade contractor is much more complex. But this is the process that's going on, and we are having tickets, and they are flowing through their board. And we are not even at the point right now where we're creating WIP limits. We are just starting to visualize. And it isn't necessarily what you wanted to see if you're the leader, but it's the process, and it's the process that's perfectly giving them the results that they're getting. So what this does is it allows them to self-organize, and it helps them to improve. And I will tell you, since they've started visualizing their work, their entire team is having different conversations. They're having very different conversations that are much more productive. So a quick word about P3 prototyping. Prototyping is a way of creating a demo of it as a design experiment. It gives stakeholders an opportunity to move around and feel the space. Just a word, augmented reality in construction and architecture is also doing this. So people are putting on the goggles and they're walking through the spaces. They're in a mechanical room and they're opening up mechanical equipment and making sure door swings are working. So there is this piece about it's this going to the place where the value is, but doing it before the design is actually completed. And so we have that ability to make changes. I think this is the last major approach that I'm going to approach with Lean in Design, but A3 thinking structure. So it's a story on a sheet. So what I'm representing here is an 11 by 17 sheet. The goal is that we keep everything confined to one piece of paper, and then we're able to tell a story about a particular challenge that we're facing and as a team and how we're working through it. This allows collaborative work to happen together as a collaborative thinking. So, for example, we might take an example that is a real life example. A group was being challenged with the problem that they were significantly seeing a growth projection. I don't know how that's going for them now, but they were also being constrained by a limited availability of experienced workers. And so the group together was taking this challenge on, and they started, by looking at the current state, talking about the future state, looking at an analysis, proposing steps, and then creating a follow-up action plan. I often like to use things like countermeasures and keeping that all transparent so everybody's aware of what we're up against. This one happens to be for a construction, but here's another example of one where there's obviously some choices that are getting made here, and they're creating an A3 that's basically capturing whatever this challenge or this initiative is for their project. They're adding metrics, they're adding photos, but again, the key is this is all on one 11 by 17, and this looks like a tracking progress and being able to show how they're doing on whatever that challenge was. Here's another one where they were using maybe choosing by advantages, and they put that in as the data and other information in their analysis. But what's interesting is you might walk into a big room and you might see a wall where they've got all their A3s. And now, instead of wondering why a decision was made, an owner or whoever can transparently walk up. They can see the high level story on the sheet. What was the challenge? You know, why did they do the decision that they did? And the story is basically told there. So we've covered all those. And so I'm just going to quickly talk about, again, going back to, there are technology enabling lean tools. There are things that help us with whiteboards. There are tools out there for Last Planner. There are tools out there for CBA. So choosing by advantages, there's at least a couple that I can think of, but if you Google search that, you can find it. We've obviously got project coordination tools. There's Kanban and Scrum and collaborative meeting platforms. So we're all exploring this, I think, and being challenged because we're being constrained now with social distancing. So technology enabling tools are out there, and I encourage you to seek those out. The softwares have come a long ways, and they do add a lot of value. The other thing is consider just grabbing a lean coach to help you through a period of a journey that you're trying to navigate. Expediting your team to move forward can really go a lot better when you have a lean coach that's maybe helping you focus on the right things at the right time. There is a ton of information out there, and just being able to weed through all of that and figure out is an opportunity. There is going to be I guess we would call it Eileen. It's like a webinar, but it's going to be a gathering of lean coaches. If you want to meet lean coaches.
Event. It's a virtual
event, and it's upcoming. I think it's May 1st. So check the LCI website for that. And then I just challenge you, what new actions or ideas can you take that you learned today and take back to your team, especially focused on some of those challenges I put forward, because those are directly related to Operation Science. The Lean Construction Institute is there. It's a nonprofit organization, and this is an opportunity for people to come together and really catalyze and transform our industry. So I encourage you to get in the conversation. There's community practices all over the country and obviously all over the world. But here we've got, as of March 2018, these are a lot of our hotspots. We're used to looking at hotspot charts, but this is the hotspots of LCI activity. So if you're in an area that doesn't have anything, I encourage you to get something going and maybe doing a lean coffee or just something and getting people engaged. Again, there's e-learning on the website. There's lots of videos. There's data. There's project examples and reports and technical reports out there if you need the data. And there is there's a number of classes, and these are courses where we've been kind of is in this whole area of awareness, and we've been doing lean in the design phase, and you can dive deeper into lean in design phase. There's books available. Do a study action with your group. Read a book together and then start applying it to your work. And so again, going back, find your local COP. There's things that are lean coffees. These are all LCI COPs, community of practices. And a lot of them are meeting virtually during COVID. So, and there are international forums where people are talking about lean. So and in other countries, like we said, there's the Lean in Design Forum coming up, May 2020. And again, they're meeting virtually for COVID. And we are, here's just a look at, it's a 2-day event. So this is the first day and this is the second day. Again, this information is on the website, but just to kind of bring this right in front of your face, these are going to be some great speakers, and they're going to be diving more deeper into specific topics that you can choose. And LCI Congress is October 2020. And let's do a plus delta and any questions. There's my contact information if you want to contact me with any questions, or you can email info@leanconstruction.org.
Thank you. We do have some questions. We're going to go over just a tiny bit to get some in here. If you do have plus deltas, make sure to put them into the questions box. We want your feedback. The first one is going back to Big Room a little bit. How do you think the uptake of video conferencing will impact the Big Room in the future?
Well, I think it's going to be a place where, and people that are very creative are coming up with great solutions for how to do this. I think it's going to be, I don't know where we're going with it, but I think Big Room is this is similar to the question that we had before, but I think this goes back to the challenge. I think we have to reinvent how we, whether it's even Big Room, how do we reinvent how we do collaborative meetings? How do we not let COVID keep us isolated and push us back into our silos? So I think it's really a challenge for everyone is to keep the communication flowing. But Big Room is going to be a specific challenge, but teams are already starting to figure that out. So I would say stay tuned because people are going to be talking about it.
Thank you so much. This came in when you were referring to set-based design. Can you describe what must change in the design practice of having stabilized architecture backgrounds provided to consultants so that they can efficiently draw once? In the continuous design, do all consultants change every time a plan or revision takes place?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I don't know if that's coming from an engineer or because often what I hear and what we do is we price our value is based on doing a design one time. So the key is that in set-based design, again, it's holding us back from executing that design fully. So it may require actually negotiating our contracts so that we're talking in terms of we're going to do set-based design. So we need to add some, but the key is we're not trying to put in that we're going to do a design cycle 2 times or 3 times. Instead, we're going to be evaluating and building value for the customer. And then we're going to be pursuing more of a detailed design with the particular one that gets brought forward. So this is very key. It is very, very hard to hold back engineers, specifically as an engineer speaking, hold them back from designing fully. And so it's this key is how do we actually hold back and we just get conceptual and we agree upon what we're going to do at each step.
Okay. Our next question is, and I do want to remind people to put those plus deltas into the questions box because we do want that feedback. How does target value delivery correspond with SD, DD, and CD phasing that project teams are used to scheduling around?
So I think what we're seeing is in target value delivery is actually a paradigm shift, is they just aren't thinking in that terms anymore, and they're evolving it together. I urge anybody who's more interested in target value delivery to take deeper other courses that give you deeper understanding.
Okay, our next question is, how effective is LPS in design, considering design as an iterative process in comparison to LPS in construction, which is a linear process?
I think that's a great point, and I'm glad somebody asked that one. Where I have found that is, this is my opinion, but is that it's much more successful is towards that later end of when we're getting more into that CD phase and we get more into that linear process in design where we kind of know what we all have to design and we just got to get it done. And so that's where a lot of the value is for LPS, I think, is going to be in that design phase of that, where we traditionally think of that CD phase. Earlier on in that conceptual design phase and that schematic design phase, I think there's a lot more conversations about choosing by advantages and set-based design and how do we do things in more of an iterative and managing multiple things at once. So thank you for asking that because that's a really important point. It's hard to apply a last planner system way early up front. So.
Okay, I do want to remind people that this presentation is being recorded and a copy of the recording and the slide deck will be sent out to all registrants and participants. I'm going to kind of lump the next two together.